A wise man told me once, fear can kill you or inspire you to action.
Consider this a disclaimer about the controversy about this movie before we get into it, about the depiction of the Spanish conquistadors as well as the Aztec Empire. However, I do want to point out that I am not of either culture, so I feel woefully unequipped to handle that discussion. I'm just going to leave it with 3 questions and answers. Was the Aztec Empire one of the most brutal in history? Yes. Were the Spanish conquistadors just like any other colonizer? Yes. Did other colonizing nations like the British and the French demonize the Spanish? Also yes. Things aren't as black and white, and history is very complicated. The premise of this movie is very reminiscent of those late 90s, early 2000s Elseworlds, where DC would take their characters and put them in completely different settings and see how much of the character's essence would remain even in those settings. And in this case, we have Batman, who is part of the Aztec Empire. It's certainly an interesting premise, though I always have to tilt my head at the idea of including real-world figures into this, especially since you are changing them a bit. And at the time of this video, there is some controversy going on with Wonder Woman and Captain America regarding how they deal with a real-life terrible human being. So with that being said, there's always gonna be a bit of side-eye when you do decide to do this. But that being said, treating this as a piece of historical fiction is not a bad idea because there is something there. Our Batman this time is Quetzalcoatl, who is a boy born into Aztec nobility who loses his family when the Spanish conquistadors, led by Hernan Cortes, murder his father and basically start taking over the Aztec Empire. And as you may have guessed, he becomes Batman. And that's the interesting part of this. How far can you change Batman until he stops feeling like Batman? Yohula is very much like a character seeking vengeance. He adopts bat-like traits, and he's a good fighter, and he has a need for justice. But I'm not sure if that... I mean, he's not Bruce Wayne, which he obviously isn't, but I don't really see any reason why he can't be called Batman. He certainly ticks off a lot of the core characteristics that make Bruce Wayne Batman, so I don't see why not. Of course, he isn't the only one here, as we have our own Two-Face, who is Hernan Cortes. A interesting choice, but let's be honest, him being Two-Face is not really a big deal here. He does not develop a, minor spoilers here, split personality at any point. We also have the Joker, who is heavily teased in this movie adaptation. He doesn't play as big a role as the trailers imply. As a matter of fact, there's the character of, I believe, Pedro de Alvarado, who is another real-life figure who acts as Cortez's second man, who serves as more of a secondary villain. Now, we do get some other Batman-related characters. There's a Catwoman who serves the poor of the Aztec Empire. There's a Poison Ivy who is an Aztec deity. There's an Alfred-like character who helps Quetzalcoatl. So there are Batman elements, and yeah, it's interesting. I do feel that this movie does do some interesting things with the idea of Batman in a Aztec setting. However, at the end of the day, interesting is probably the highest praise I can give this movie, as there are some noticeable flaws in this. And I'm not talking about the story, I'm talking more of like general stuff, like technical stuff. For starters, the pacing of this movie is very weird. Like, at the same time, it feels very slow and very fast. Like, there are moments where nothing seems to be happening and the plot is moving at a glacial pace until all of a sudden it just kickstarts and things just keep happening all at once. This happens multiple times in the movie and it was rather jarring. There's also the animation, not the art style. The art is actually pretty good, but the animation is very stilted at times. There's a moment with the Joker where you can just feel him being moved by the animators, and it's a questionable moment. I don't know how much time they had to do this. Wait a minute. As a matter of fact, I believe this was announced in 2022, so they've had like 3 years to work on this. So why is the animation so stilted at times? And one of the biggest issues is the sound design of this movie. And I'm not talking about the voice acting, as I watched the English dub, and I think the characters do a good job vocally. No, the sound design is very awkward because at one moment in the climax, I could clearly recognize the Wilhelm scream sound effect being used. Now, the Wilhelm scream is mostly used for comedy purposes. The fact that I have something to say about the sound design at all is probably a good sign that the sound design probably wasn't as great as it should have been. Finally, minor spoilers, but this movie really thinks it's gonna get a sequel, because we get not 1, not 2, but 3 teases and set up for a second movie. Now, I'm not sure if the glacial and choppy pace of the overall movie was because they cut things out to make a sequel, but man, the presentation of this movie, despite its interesting premise, it doesn't really warrant a sequel, to be honest. And that said, the fact that they had to court so much real-world controversy to get this made, I'm not sure they'll even risk it. Still, if you are interested, it's a decent one-time watch. And hey, this has 2 different audio tracks, so take your pick.
You've been given a sacred mission. Whether you accept it or not, it's the truth.